Hello. Several months ago, one of our comrades was invited to the revolutionary Lumpen radio to give an interview. We decided to upload several excerpts on our channel. They talked about the whole point of our work, what is the place of the United States in the modern capitalist system, why Marxist theory remains important, and is revolution possible today. You can find the whole interview by clicking on the link in description below. Don't forget to hit the like button to see more videos.
On a different platform. So we'll get into it. Can we just start off with yourself? We always have an introduction with people on the show, get to know them a little bit, like your background, you know, how you started off getting politically educated, or what your interests are, where you want to be, you know, any organizations you work with, and anything like that.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, my name is Kevin. I've been working specifically with Politsturm for almost 3 years now. So even though we've been sort of a smaller sort of project, we've existed for several years. Just to give people a little bit of background about Politsturm, it was produced mostly on the Russian language side. It means political assault when directly translated into English. That's what Politsturm means. But I live in the United States. I went to college, studied economics, got exposed to Marxian economics at university. So really wanted to understand capitalism. And once you get the Marxian understanding of that, it leads to, understandings of exploitation and imperialism and so on. So, I've thought it was important to create a platform to educate people on these topics, especially in the United States. There's a real dearth or not a great understanding of these topics. And there's definitely a lot of propaganda from the capitalist side that goes, unless there's platforms and projects of people debunking these capitalist lies about various topics, then it's just going to keep perpetuating. So I've been working with Politsturm. We basically produce news, video content, graphical quotes is something we also do quite a bit of.
I was just wondering if you could just go into a little bit of what Marxian economics is. I've never heard of that in my life.
Yeah, so just to touch on the economics piece of it, I actually studied economics in university, but what you'll get is mostly bourgeois economics. And what I mean by that is really just focusing on price relations, not really focused on the whole economic relations of production, like what makes a capitalist different from a worker. It really, when you study economics in modern schools, they obscure class relations. And I think that's the main goal, is to confuse and obscure more than just to elucidate and teach people about sort of the actual functioning of the economy. It's just very, very, very abstract. They just look at production like, there's labor, that's one contribution. There's landlords and they contribute land, and there's capitalists and they contribute capital. You throw it into this production function, you get output. They don't really look too much into, what's physically going on. Like, capitalists hire laborers. Laborers work for a certain amount of time producing value. Marxian economics, rather, it's not abstract to the level where it's just absurd. It gets really down to the historical development of the capitalist system over time. It's really, in my view, it's the more accurate and more scientifically developed economics, as opposed to what you learn in school, which is more just like a religion more than an actual understanding of how capitalism works. Because if we live in a capitalist society and schools are perpetuating views, they're not going to want to perpetuate that capitalism's an exploitative system, that workers all over the world are exploited. And, that's a very unpleasant message if you come from the standpoint of the dominant class in society, which is capitalists. So to segue that into why we spend so much time producing these Lenin quotes and circulating them, of course, it's not just Lenin quotes, it's other important historical socialists. We think that there's a great educational opportunity, and especially where I come from in the United States, a lot of people just don't know these figures and what they actually believed and what they said. So we do think we put a lot of time into producing modern quotes that we hope resonate with people, and we think a lot of people like them, so we just keep on doing it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just when I've been browsing Reddit, I've seen them everywhere. More than I thought I would, honestly. They do seem to be pretty viral, honestly.
Why do you think that it's important to have, for example, Lenin and other historical figures along with the text? Do you similarly have the likes of Bernie Sanders and other politicians on your text? If not, why not?
So it's funny you say that. Specifically with Bernie Sanders, we have made one quote, but it was more about the opportunism of social democrats. We're not really using quotes of Sanders, even though I know maybe that'll have a wide appeal to, he's pretty popular in the United States. We mostly stick to Lenin, Stalin, Dimitrov. Yeah.
Socialists, basically.
Yeah.
As opposed to, social democrats, which, yeah.
And why do you think it's important to have a Marxist-Leninist line? Why do you think that is? Just to go into that a little bit in more depth.
Oh yeah, specifically we've pushed hard on the popularization of Marxist-Leninist ideas because we think it's an effective tool. We think it, if we can teach people to understand Marxism-Leninism, it can give people an understanding with which to understand the world and with which they can change it. And at the same time, we think it's very, very important to use and develop Marxism to the contemporary realities of the modern world. Because going back to our platform and what we believe, we think the only class that can change the exploitative capitalist system is the proletariat. And what we aim to do is develop Marxism-Leninism so that we can actually achieve socialism, not just as some theoretical utopian idealistic goal, but it's really what we want to do. And we think that Marxism-Leninism is the best theory with which we can achieve that.
Do you think conditions in the global north, I suppose, do you think conditions in those countries are more or less conducive to that type of a revolution?
Yeah, I guess it comes down to the popular phrase is, do they have any revolutionary potential? Is there any ability for people in the capitalist center to be able to, achieve socialism like as was done in the Soviet Union? We do, or at least I do. I don't want to speak for anyone else. I do think that there's some potential, but at the same time, there's a lot of work that we need to do in terms of educating people, and I definitely don't think at this current time there's a developed enough political education, at least in the United States. And that's really why we do what we do. It's something I have a huge passion towards doing, and I've been working at it for a long time, as have other people in Politsturm, to make this content. We're not pessimistic in the sense that we don't think that there can ever be a revolution in any of the capitalist north or, capitalist core countries, whatever you want to call them. But at the same time, we're not idealistic to the sense that we think there'll be a revolution, tomorrow. We know that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get to that point.
Sure. I mean, I'm forever trying to think of each of the conditions that would have to be satisfied in order for a revolution, right? And I can never, it always seems like no matter how many you can think of or how many are satisfied, there will always be more required. So it seems like, yeah.
One thing we touch on our platform is the labor aristocracy and how there is, not only the capitalist class, but there's some degree of opportunism within the labor movement, both historically and currently, that would need to be addressed, Mm-hmm. And it's something we'll talk about more in future videos, but I do think that there's a huge opportunism that needs to be addressed, and that also goes back to, yet another reason why we maintain a Marxist-Leninist line.
So what is agitation to you? Why do you think it's important? How do you think that we can take this agitation further on the internet? Are you planning on reaching other platforms? What other support can people give you?
Oh yeah, so agitation addresses a lot of the methods that we've discussed thus far. I think one of our newest avenues that we've had some success in agitating people is using video content, because I do voiceovers in the English language for a lot of videos that are either produced in Russian or, we make original content as well. But we've been making videos just basically, what is Marxism. Down the road, we're going to put out new videos, and we agitate a lot of people because a lot of people just don't like what we have to say, and we're very open to criticism, but at the same time, we do face a lot of reactionary comments, and it comes from all angles, from religious folks or just not Marxist-Leninists who just criticize our platform and our views. But we just put out an article not too long ago. We had one that was called "Why Do We Criticize?" and then another one on left and right deviations within Marxism. Both, I'd say the right and left deviations within Marxism had quite a lot of reaction. But we challenge not just capitalist hegemony, even within the Marxist movement. itself, I think there's a lot of space for criticism, not just for the sake of just knocking people down. That's obviously not what we're trying to do. But I think that criticism plays an important role because we need to develop a proper theory so that we can develop practice that's actually effective. And we think that a lot of ideas, and you're open, anyone who's listening can read that article on our website. It's us.politsturm.com. But we do agitate with the goal of both teaching people and also criticizing. But like I said, not from the place of just criticizing for the sake of it, but from an honest perspective. We want to see Marxism-Leninism develop, and I don't think we can get there if on the Russian side they use the term like wide left. If we just have a bunch of different theories, we can all work together and get where we're going to need to go, which we're critical of. We think that we need to have a proper line, proper theory to get practice that's actually effective when we implement it in the real world. When that comes, and what does that look like? We're not at a point where we're as developed on the English-speaking platform as they are on the Russian side, but they've developed clubs and Marxists in major cities within Russia where they can educate people who look to join it, and also they've worked with unions and actually given unions a Marxist-Leninist basis that they can challenge their employer, fight to win tangible gains.
That's interesting. Do you know anything about what it's like in Russia? It obviously once was the Soviet Union, but I've always wondered, what the hell is it like? Just a normal, regular, run-of-the-mill capitalist economy? Has it got some traits the Soviet Union left? What's the script?
Yeah, personally, I've never been to Russia. I've been to Ukraine, which borders Russia, and I've lived there for a little bit, but never been to Russia in actuality. From the people I've talked to, they have a lot of the same problems that, you have in the United States and England, or, the major capitalist countries. Deindustrialization is a huge problem. After the Soviet Union collapsed, it's not as profitable for capital to flow into Russia as it is maybe China or other countries where capitalists can just get a huge rate of profit. So they have, similar problems that we have here, where deindustrialization has run its course with all the, negative social effects that brings. But in terms of, what it's like to live in Russia, I can't say. I've never been there. I've talked to people in Politsturm, but, it might be interesting to come on with someone from the actual Russian segment at a later date, if that's something you guys are open to.
Yeah, that would be really interesting.
Is the United States a sort of special type of evil? Is it in some way fundamentally different than sort of Europe or European nations? Because let's face it, your political system is special crazy.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Okay.
And I'll also say that we have a huge military. The U.S. plays a predominant role in, suppressing world revolutionary movements historically, and I think up to the current day. But then I get where the question is coming at is if people who live in other imperialist core countries, like their capitalist class, benefit in the same way that our domestic capitalist class, benefits from that sort of activity.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do think that the U.S., it plays a huge role because we have a huge military that is the shock troop of the entire global system. So I do think it plays a huge role, but then I don't think that the benefits to the capitalist class is just domestic. I think that the British capitalist class or the Australian capitalist class or whomever, they're all buying bonds as well that finance our huge military that goes into foreign countries, invades them, and
100%.
It's...
Yeah, definitely. It's just strange to me that, again, like I said, all these other countries they're equally awful, probably. From Europe, England, where I am, Australia, whatever. These are all, imperial hegemons, no doubt. But I don't even know. I don't even know if I can pin it down or put it down on something. But America, especially.
That is interesting. I didn't think they would talk about so much about so many different things there. As always, we just ask our guests to just leave where people can find them. Where can people find you? Leave us your website, all your Twitter, all that information. Leave it with us. We'll leave in the show notes as well. But if you just want to say that now.
Oh yeah, if you go to our main site, which is us.politsturm.com, Politsturm spelled Politsturm, it's us.politsturm.com. You'll find links to all of our social media platforms, our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. We also have a Patreon, but the main place is our site, so I would suggest to go there if you want to get a good idea of our platform, as well as just find us on any of our social media accounts as well.
keep doing what you're doing, keep it up. I hope people join you in support, as well as hopefully, strive towards themselves to get to a point where they can take on information, be it from theory or from, news or history, and then be able to write it up in an article, share it with you, and then just get this consciousness out there so we can all educate each other better. Yes, stay principled as always.